Hello again, everyone. Now I'm sitting in a hotel at Suvarnabhumi Airport or near Suvarnabhumi Airport, waiting for my flight to Yangon. Because for some strange reason it only departs at 20 minutes past 2 in the morning, in the middle of the night. Quite why that's at that time I have no idea. So I've got plenty of time to rest before taking my flight. So I'm at a hotel nearby. This is video number 7. This I can tell you, this video, in this video, I will cry. Right, let's try to do this because this explains what event changed my life completely. In the last video, I told you that I'd started working in Yangon at a school, a private school, teaching English mostly to kindergarten and primary school kids. Yeah, and that was great fun, even though it was a bit of a shock, but it was great fun. And so I stayed doing that Monday to Friday, and also in the evenings teaching some sort of young adults, general English, business English, and the like. So having settled in Yangon, I thought at the weekend I would go out and explore. And I had spent some weekends exploring nearby. I was living in an area called Lamador, which is like downtown Yangon, made up of very old apartment buildings, tenement buildings. Yeah, I think I can show you a picture of my apartment, which I rented for something, I don't know, about $90 a month. It was absolutely appalling. Yes, there was no generator, so when the electricity went off, which it went off every evening, there was no backup power, which meant there wasn't even power for my fan to keep cool. So I actually got used to sleeping in the hot season in about sort of 36, 38 degrees, which is quite a useful benefit actually if you stay living out in the tropics, if you can actually get to sleep in that weather, in that temperature. So I would explore around Yangon. And then one day, I read about Dala, Dala Township, across the river. Yeah, I was fairly near the river. Yangon has got a large river. And I thought, I know, I'll go and explore across the river. Yeah, something to do. But my teaching colleagues, who had been in Yangon longer than me, said, don't go to Dala. Don't go across the river to Dala. I said, well, why? They said, it's a dangerous area, very dangerous area. So, of course, I wanted to go. And at that time, more recently, they built a bridge across the river to Dala. But in those days, you went on the ferry, and it was quite unusual for a foreigner to be on that ferry. They had to write down my name on a piece of paper in a book and charged me, I think it was $1 to go across the river. So I went across the river and I got off on the other side, and there were people with pedalos. So these are like the old-fashioned rickshaws, three-wheel rickshaws that you might see in old movies about Singapore and Hong Kong and the like. So little pedalos, they're called, bicycle-driven pedalos. And there was a young guy, a teenager, who spoke a little of English, not much. And he said, where do you want to go? I said, well, I don't know, you just cycle slowly around and show me the sights of Dala Township. Now, okay, there had been a recent cyclone, hurricane, which is not unusual because that part of Myanmar, south from Yangon, is very low lying. The cyclone Nargis, some years before, had killed thousands of people. Yeah. And Dala was a very poor area at that time. So there were no brick buildings to speak of, and there were almost no wooden buildings. Everything was built out of bamboo. All the houses were just, built out of bamboo with thatch sort of, or bamboo roofs or some other material on the roof. And because of the cyclone, the whole area, the road was raised up a bit where I was, but then off the sides of the roads where the people's houses were, was about a meter below where the road was. And so that was completely flooded. Yeah. And so there were dozens and dozens of houses. about half a meter or a meter in water, in dirty, muddy water, just completely flooded all these people's houses, these families' houses. And which of course looked absolutely terrible. Yeah. I mean, I had seen poverty in Thailand and in Laos as well, in areas, in North Thailand. So, I was used to seeing poverty, but nothing like this. This was just bloody awful. Wait a moment. But despite that total poverty and the mud and the water and the flooding everywhere, yeah, everyone everyone came out of their houses to wave at me and to say Mingalaba, hello, yeah, because it was such a rarity for a foreigner to visit that area, yeah. And the little kids were standing, up to their thighs in this muddy water, all waving at me. I felt so terrible because for a long time, for many, many months, when I was in Thailand, I'd been walking up and down the beach feeling so sorry for myself, about the problems I had, personal problems I had in Thailand. And I was, oh, woe is me, why am I so unlucky? And here I was, you know, almost like a king on this peddler going along the raised road while all the local people were standing in the crap and smiling, smiling and smiling and waving. That completely changed my life. And I decided, right, no more feeling sorry for yourself, Simon, because whatever bad experiences I've been through is absolutely nothing compared to what these people have been going through, and probably not for the first time either. And because I'd got the job at the school, the paid job at the school, which was, was the way out of my problems in Thailand, I thought I remembered the promise I made to my God, which was if I ever get out of this mess in Thailand, I'm going to pay it back somehow. And so I thought, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to pay it back in some way. And how can I pay it back? Because I'm not, I'm not a rich, I'm not a millionaire. I can't pay it back with money, but I can pay it back with education, even though I wasn't a teacher, but I was improving as a teacher. And so from that day, which must 2012, from that day forward, I've tried to keep this promise of helping the kids in Myanmar, the ones who can't afford the education, or the schools that can't afford the resources, teaching resources, or don't have the ability to teach well because, for example, the local teachers who are so dedicated to their task, uh, but don't have a native English speaker to help them to improve their own pronunciation or their own accent. And I thought, well, I might not be a teacher with an education degree or a postgrad education degree, but my knowledge of English as my mother tongue is pretty good. My accent's good. I can do what I can to help those teachers and to help the young students in orphanages, monastery schools, and the sort of the government primary schools where they are the shortage of resources is unbelievable. You wouldn't realize how bad it is. Yeah. And that's what I've been doing. Who's this crowd of kids behind me? Um, the guy in the pedalo, he said, "Do you want to see the monastery and the monastery school?" So yeah, let's go and see the monastery school, the Buddhist monastery school in Dala. We went there, and there were two volunteer Burmese teachers teaching Burmese language and teaching some simple maths. And I said, "Well, do you want me to take a lesson? Let's an English lesson." I hasten to add, not Burmese. And they said, yeah, brilliant. And so what you see behind me is one of the classrooms. Now, these classrooms had no electricity, no lighting. It was just an empty room at the monastery. And so they gathered up all the kids and who rushed into the room for me to do an English lesson. Now, you look behind me, there were more than 60 kids. Some of them of all ages, from, the youngest maybe about 4 years old to probably about 12 or 13 years old. No, 12 years old because it was primary. Yeah. No one spoke a word of English except for one girl. The Burmese teachers couldn't speak a word of English, and all the children couldn't speak a word of English. But one girl could speak a few words of English. Not quite sure where she learned, but kudos to her. And so she, for the first lesson, was my uh, translator. Yeah. And and because I was so highly experienced in singing nursery rhymes with the 4-year-olds at the school I teach at during the week, we hit it off extremely well. Singing ABC and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday nursery rhymes. And so that's how I started doing my volunteer teaching. And the following weekend, I came back more prepared with my laptop computer and some loudspeakers and with some posters to stick on the wall and with the songs, the nursery rhyme songs on videos, etc., etc. So they were sung much better than I could. And the kids would all sit on the floor, and the youngest ones would fall asleep, yeah, which is fine. And the older ones, some of the boys would play around, and so every sort of 10 minutes, a monk would come in with a large bamboo cane and would viciously hit the boys with this cane to stop them playing around, as young kids do. The punishment didn't seem to worry the boys at all. They were obviously used to it because they would whimper for 5 seconds, and then as soon as the monk had disappeared, they were all happy and smiling and chatting again. Yeah. So you can see behind me, I took this photo 2012. These kids are now must be in their 20s. Yeah. I wonder what they're doing. But this is what I did at that school, Dala Monastery School. Yeah. And every time I think about it, it makes me cry. This was the first school. This was the first volunteer school, the first volunteer effort I made, although all those years ago. And since then, despite ups and downs in my life, I've tried to continue. Yeah, tried to continue the volunteer work. Yeah. Now, I better stop because I'll just burst into tears because it had such an effect on me. Yeah. And it's something that, as I say, is the most probably the major part of my life now, especially now I've just retired. It gives me more time to try to do this volunteer, this educational charity work that I started in 2012. Uh, Tomorrow I'll be in Yangon. I've got to be in Yangon for a few days before I fly up to the Inle Lake area because there's no plane tomorrow or the next day. The planes are full. So I'm going to go down to this place, see what's going on. I'm sure it's changed because now you've got the bridge, Dala Bridge. It's easy to get there. Anyway, I'm going to have a look. And then perhaps in my next video, I can report back maybe with some photos of if the monastery school still exists. And heaven forbid if anybody actually remembers me. I doubt it. Anyway, that's enough for the moment. All right. Thanks.